what has happened to the alternative media. We are now several weeks after the election, and we are seeing some of the same cognitive impairment. With me is Kyle Rearden. He's written quite a bit about this. Kyle, what are we seeing from the liberty movement? What are you seeing?
Well, I think there was an earlier podcast we did, which was about, pretty much how do you go from Ron Paul to Donald Trump in 4 short years or something to that effect. And I think what's kind of unfortunate about the results of Donald Trump's presidential candidacy is that there has been, quite honestly, the biggest co-optation of what has been the alternative media that I've ever seen. It's never been on this scale before. I mean, Donald Trump was able to accomplish what the Tea Party and even Occupy Wall Street kind of failed to do, which was not just co-opt certain types of activists of certain partisan or ideological persuasions, but in fact grab many prominent people within the alternative media itself, which is really kind of disconcerting.
Yeah, we've seen this incremental the last several years, but especially the last year. We saw people say that the establishment hated Trump, and I was perceiving the opposite. What we found was, you can accurately predict the election of Donald Trump, which I did. People won't listen after the fact. Now, what I'm seeing is disturbing behavior that reminds me of the social justice warriors. So if they've been criticized for going, this is racist, that's racist, it's interesting because, no matter how much conspiracy content I have on this channel, so many comments came in after a recent video calling me a libtard. Saying, I wouldn't be surprised if that guy was funded by Soros. So, we've talked about how they're discrediting their own argument by saying, well, if you're an independent thinker, we're going to call you a Clinton supporter. We really don't care. And even looking at your channel and seeing, and I'm going, well, what does that tell us about their decision making? And what other scams are they going to fall for? I think it's a really bad sign. I think we should talk about it, but it's not a good sign.
No, it's not. And I think to kind of get the listeners who may not have listened to the earlier controlled schizophrenia episode you and I did, to try and encapsulate what exactly has happened here, I think the closest thing to a concise explanation, and I'm kind of looking forward to how you're going to dissect it, pretty much comes from Chris Cantwell, who wrote an article, and now the following quote is an excerpt from that. It's not the whole thing, obviously. But he wrote it in last March, and it's entitled, "Donald Trump Cured My Addiction." And so I basically took portions of that article, used it as an introductory quote for one of my articles, and so here's the segment. And again, this is by Chris Cantwell. Quote, "I personally had become so consumed by my quarrels with the state that I allowed my hatred of that institution to bleed into my feeling about my fellow man and civilization in general. I'd have to watch the world burn, if only to see the state burn with it. In short, I was part of the problem. But Donald Trump did more than stir up a nativist or nationalist sentiment in me. I identified with his boldness, his willingness to stand in the face of immense criticism and say what needed to be said, his unorthodox style of dealing with people, and the success that it brought. I hope Donald Trump becomes the next president of the United States. I expect that he will. But even if he doesn't, he's changed America and the course of history forever. He has inspired me and countless others to strive for greatness in our own lives and for our civilizations. He has shattered the rules of politics, shown that boldness is a path to victory." Close quote. And so you basically have somebody who was a Ron Paul supporter explaining why he switched to Donald Trump.
And more than that, wasn't he purported to be someone that was anti-statist or anarchist?
Yeah, he's openly an anarchist, or at least was before Trump, yeah.
Okay, so Trump brought him back to loving the state, which is something I'm seeing with others that purport to be very anti-establishment, that are still saying to this moment that he is going to do something. And most of all, I am a leftist. They keep repeating this, and people that are coming out of the woodworks that have been watching for several years. That is disappointing, but that's where thinking is. With Chris Cantwell, and I do got to say he's one of the I don't know how do I say this, but I want to pick my words carefully. Least desirable individuals to actually listen to. There are a few videos that I watch. I realized I was watching an angry bastard. And I kind of have a thing about not watching people that are kind of a little bit mentally ill and frothing at the mouth in some way, shape, or form, and trying to basically beat people up with their mouth, which is what some people choose to do with YouTube, to just attack others because they themselves are very insecure little men and little boys. And kind of the whole feud thing with Bueller, who has his own problems, definitely a sociopath in his own right. I think that it's interesting to see a lot of sociopaths sometimes go back and forth with each other, and I think it takes a bigger man to not get involved in public feuds back and forth on Facebook. So this is a individual that one could argue was already showing signs of mental illness long before Trump came on the scene. He was showing creating fake websites like Anthony Bueller Exposed. Now, again, I don't like the other guy. The other guy is what you would call, in my opinion, a douchebag. But, spending your time making fake news websites, Anthony Bueller, I forget the name of it. So this is like the moral caliber of this individual. We also see some people claim to be anti-statists aren't exactly angels themselves. Sometimes it's like a deeper seated reason why they hate the state. And I'm not using left talking points, but, there's certain reasons why in certain moments they hate the state, or at least at that moment, because of the way things are. Now, if they go from hating the state to loving Trump, look, a lot of the Obama supporters were out of line for saying you're racist if you don't support Obama. I didn't like it when they insinuated it towards me. But looking at some of these individuals, it's like, why are they having a difficult time seeing the transition from Bush to Obama and Obama to Trump, and nothing really changes? And those people in the Middle East keep dying. I mean, the most asinine thing was how some people went from 9/11 truth to going, now Middle Eastern people are actually a threat. I actually at least had one person actually tell me that in the comment section. Alex, been a viewer for a long time. It's like, wow, this is actually scary, man. It's like being in a sci-fi movie. That there are this many people that are subscribers to my channel that are thinking this way. Now this is just a massive flight from this channel as new listeners find this content. But there are so many people, we're not even going to get into listing them all. And you see her feelings. Like, I never saw this type of divide in our country after Obama first came in. I mean, there was a little bit, but throwing things back in your court, Kyle, you were not a Obama voter, to the best of my knowledge, ever.
No.
And so I'm sure that you've had some back and forth with Obama people trying to explain to them that you're not racist, that you literally are not buying the change. Compare trying to talk sense to Obama supporters to trying to talk sense to Trump supporters. Can you determine one worse than the other? Were some to you nastier than the other group? Compare the two.
Well, the flavors of the Obama cult of personality supporters is at most only a slightly different flavor from the Trump cult of personality, worshipers. They're basically worshiping these authoritarian demagogues, right? I mean, that's kind of the similarity here. The only difference at most, besides skin color, would be rhetoric, right? I mean, so Obama portrayed himself as some sort of progressive socialist. Trump is basically portraying himself as some sort of totalitarian fascist. And of course, notice that freedom, real freedom, human liberty, is not actually a choice, like how it very rarely pops up in any sort of political campaign. But then again, I mean, here's the other problem too. It's not just people who worship their chosen messianic figureheads. It's not just a particular political candidacy versus another, political or a wannabe politician or whatever. because in many ways it's really awfully identical in terms of the structure. There.
Okay, I call that an internet hiccup, so we'll just continue.
Okay. It doesn't really matter what the specific flavor of one candidate versus another is. I mean, the point is that it's all cult of personality. It's all very servile. And so, to answer your question about, is there any real difference between the Obama supporters and the Trump supporters? Actually, no. In fact, there's more similarities than not. The vitriol they spew at their perceived opponents is rather quite biased, right? So I remember the Obama supporters saying that anybody who doesn't support Obama is a racist. And I also remember, and this is more recent, and I think you said something similar, that people who don't support Trump are a bunch of libtards or something to that effect. And it's funny because last time I checked, I'm more free market than pretty much your average, constitutionalist is, because I want an unlicensed, unregulated, untaxed, kind of basically a no laws, government laws anyway, free market. And that's a little too much for some of the we want limited government crowd. And so the fact that many of them are Trump supporters now, and have been for a little while, and occasionally calling me a socialist, is really funny because I've had disagreements, even on VoIP calls that some of them they're saying how wonderful public roads are, and I want private roads. So, I mean, that's kind of a controlled schizophrenia right there, where their worship of Trump is so extreme that they can't even see the socialism that they're in favor of, but then they demonize me for even wanting less socialism than they do.
So here's a comment that was just left on my channel, and they are so hateful when they come, and they assume that we are literally like foreigners that like love Obama. It basically seems to be, or she says, quote, "I did not vote, but if I would have voted for Trump, Hillary." There's no period there, so it's like I would have voted for Trump, Hillary. Hillary needs to be out of there as if she's already elected, and so does Obama. You guys don't like our country, leave it and don't come back.
The love it or leave it fallacy, yeah.
So you hear them saying this to Americans too. Is that correct? Is this not just something directed at minorities? This is just being said all around. It's difficult to gauge. I'm just going to pause.
Well, I mean, people usually consider me to be Caucasian. So so on that level, the variable of race or ethnicity, at least for me, is kind of a controlled variable. But because I don't go further and say I love Trump, and not only that, but I say, hey, Trump's a bad guy, here's my reasons, and I don't get angry, I don't say fuck Trump, I don't kind of do that.
But I explain. People say to you, leave the country.
It happens. It happens all the time though. So
because I'm trying to decipher if this is like foreigner thing, or they're telling Americans to leave the country. If so, that's more psycho than what I thought. I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, you don't look like you're from here, leave the country. But Americans telling Americans to leave the country just as sport is absolutely psychotic.
Well, hold on. Let me add another punctuation onto that exclamation point. I've been told love it or leave it for years before Trump. And last time I checked, people usually consider me to be Caucasian, and I'm natively born here. So, yeah, put that in your...
I just don't understand it. I mean, it's so over the top what she's saying. Part two, you can all believe what you want about Trump, but he's going to turn everything around and make America great again. We're not going to allow and she like censors out her word anymore, or YouTube did. I don't know. Bullshit automatically is censored. We're not going to allow B *** anymore. And he left 25 worse terrorists out of prison, and they are all over the United States now. And Obama. So Trump let the terrorists out of the United States. She just jumps in without putting in Obama's name. So Trump's going to make everything good around America great. We're not going to allow bullshit anymore. And he left 25 worst terrorists out of prison. They were all in the United States now. And Obama, Hillary Clinton, a bunch of guns for ISIS. Since the ISIS can never be trusted again, they both lost their minds. Go, Trump, go. That's it. Delete.
Jeez. Yeah, I
And
mean,
you can't argue with that. And that's the advice. And that was the point. And we're covering a lot of points here, all important. You cannot rationalize with most all Trump supporters. I'm going to say most to be nice. I haven't seen examples of where you can rationalize. I was banished, I guess, from the Obama crowd as I talk about how the left treated me in Portland, despite the fact people assume I'm on their side. There's videos of me talking about Obama for years and years and years and years, even before he was elected, saying that he was a charlatan and a fake. And I faced persecution, social persecution. So I'm like a veteran of this, like a veteran of not bowing down to the leader. And there is this: you are either with us or you are with the Clinton camp. And it's like, do they hate the people that say that they didn't vote more than those that will just admit that they actually do support Clinton? Because I don't understand that. I don't understand how this conspiracy theory that someone's just making it up, that they are not participating in picking a master, seems to be a really foreign concept to them. It seems to be like an idea in which they hate and the person behind the idea. No, seriously, the ones that don't pick a master. I'm not for burning stuff and even for wild protests. I'm just not going to pick a master. What is their problem?
well, they don't want to be free. I mean, this is something most people really don't understand. Most Americans, from my own personal observations for years, has been that most Americans are authoritarian. And if that is true, that would mean most American men are authoritarian. And then by similar, that would also mean that most American women are authoritarian. So right off the bat, anybody who's even slightly libertarian, not even necessarily going all the way to the logical endpoint, because we don't believe in the government, the legitimacy anyway, the state, is kind of, you're already kind of a minority of a minority. And that's just something that people kind of really, it's interesting. I've looked at the fake grievances of like the social justice warriors, for example, and a lot of them claim to be persecuted. Like, oh, I'm a trans, whatever the fuck. And because they keep changing that week by week, by the way, it's actually kind of a joke now. And I will agree with the Trump supporters on that one, because even a broken clock is correct twice a day. But yeah, they're like, I'm a trans fill in the blank this week. And it's like, oh, I'm a persecuted minority. Oh, I feel bad because people are misidentifying what pronoun they should use for me. And I'm over here like, you people don't understand oppression. Okay, the whole like transgender bathrooms thing in one of the Carolinas, which was a thing last year, is kind of like, that is like a non-issue. Okay, I mean, you've mentioned for years about, the slaughter of the Afghans. Hell, the most recent thing would be probably the Syrian civil war, and actually the Aleppo offensive more recently with the evacuation of those people and so forth. So, like, there's real things happening in the world where people are being murdered by government. A lot of times their own government. That's what democide is. There's real tyranny and oppression happening, but then you have all these disingenuous activists of various flavors promoting fake grievances, and I'm over here like, let's see, last time I checked, I have a certain skin color, but that doesn't seem to make a difference because I say things publicly that most people don't like, most Americans don't like, and they tell me to love it or leave it. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm natively born. I have a better idea. Why don't you leave? I mean, which one of us is more American?
Exactly. If they want an authoritarian SS country, there are places where they can go where it's already established. I think people forget that millions dead in the Middle East is not an issue with Black Lives Matter.
No.
And whether someone's Middle Eastern or not, that's not the point. Millions is quite a large number, especially when you have an admitted 1.4 million about a decade ago. Looking at my old videos, I'm citing numbers like that and information like the Pentagon isn't even counting the bodies. That's not their policy.
Yeah.
That's wicked. And then a lot of stuff was coming out about sexual assault on children. And even Alex Jones himself would go and do certain rants regarding some of this. And that's what actually attracted me to hit some of his earlier material until he changed. And now he'll actually mock a Middle Eastern immigrant saying, hey, white woman, come here, I'm going to rape you. And then go into this caricature. Yeah. And it's like, how do people think that this is okay to go from saying, hey, we're all about the truth. Hey, let's demonize all these people. After we know, and even this lady who's leaving the comment, yes, we know about ISIS being created, but why demonize then all the refugees saying they're all ISIS? So what they've done, we talked about this. Maybe we should leave some links, create some show notes. People should check out the previous podcasts that we've done. We've done quite a few. Like in the summer of this year of 2016, before. See, we were focusing on Donald and this deception and this co-opting of the alternative media. We weren't on the bandwagon of Hillary Clinton. My videos about Hillary Clinton actually talked about, just to recap, how I felt that she was faking it, the falling down. Like, I'm like, oh boy, I don't care what my hair looks like today. I got to get on YouTube right now and document this is what I'm seeing. She's faking it. The fake, she's going to die. She's going to die. Pneumonia. I mean, that was the trending story for like a week on Google, that the lady was about to die. Emergency meetings, DNC. I wanted to make this point also with Cantwell. Cantwell represents a psychology, to go deeper into that, that I've also talked about. They want daddy back.
Yeah.
It's the abandonment issue. They went from Clinton and their leader being basically exposed. They really covered up Chinagate and brought in Lewinsky-gate. And then we had a Bush, everybody. Oh, boy. Oh, it's the retarded Texan. No, it's the wealthy East Coast establishment went to Yale Bush, who played naive in some ways. And then we had Obama. So combined with this threat of Hillary, it's like, oh my God, the white race is becoming desecrated, extinct white genocide. We're being stepped on. Men need to become men again. And, there's certain elements of truth to that part. And sovereignty. And you have one guy come out and say all the right words. China, China, China. Well, I've been talking about China for years, so have others. But he's all set up in this theater, and I call it a theater, to where they're all working together in this whole thing. There was no debate between any of them. And Trump's the one that comes out on a white horse, talks about the trade deficit. Talks about China, talks about, well, you know what? We really need World War III. Hey, how about peace? So it's like a bad caricature of Ron Paul, but just enough buzzwords. Hey, I really don't want to blow up the earth. Well, maybe I do. I do want to get the barbarians that are there. Now we have to guard against the terrorists. And it's like, wait a minute. A lot of these people in the alternative media were warning about the false flags and shootings and even other areas. And now they're just going to get behind. And then it gets even more bizarre. They go, okay, mainstream media, you guys are fake news. How dare you, Washington Post, put out that list of 200? They're not going after the Washington Post when they say that ISIS claim responsibility for such and such attack. So the mainstream media says that the terrorists are out to get them, and when the FBI and DHS and the CIA tell them the terrorists are out to get them, they're all down with what the government's telling them.
Yeah.
They're all down with Fox News when Fox News is getting them all worked up about that restaurant that said no Trump supporters here. But if it's not about that, they hate the media. They can't trust the CIA, can't trust the FBI, can't trust any of the stuff about the Russian. That's fine, but they do if it's demonizing. So with Donald Trump, there's like a demigod father figure return. It's very archetypal, and it's almost dark spiritual. It's like Antichrist consciousness. I don't want to get too long-winded, but I'm not trying to come out the listeners with a super religious angle. But I think that there's a dark side to all this. And it's not like one Antichrist. It's like an Antichrist consciousness or a series of this. And they're just descending on this elevator into hell. And they're trying to take us into a certain direction. And I have called not only Donald Trump being the selection, but World War III to follow. And I even put it in writing. Figure, well, if I put it in writing, people might at least look at it. And it's so off the wall, Kyle. It's so above and beyond even the left to even contemplate. Maybe it just sounds too conspiratorial, but the idea that this is being staged, that we are in a theater of war, that these are actors, if you will. I am proposing that. And I just feel like documenting that because it's like the wheels are in motion. Now China's telling Donald Trump, don't cross the red line with Taiwan. Don't you do it. And he gets on the phone. It's like, whoa, this is going to be a flashpoint. This isn't. How could one believe that this is an accident too, Kyle? Say that someone was already exposed to the opinion that Donald Trump was a dark horse.
Yeah.
Not wanting on the right horse to come and save, but that he was going to sabotage and cause World War III. Wouldn't it be some sort of cognitive impairment to be exposed to that or a podcast like this and then to see him go in a certain direction? The next thing, Kyle, something's going to happen between him and Putin. They're not going to be friends at some point. And the world's going to be in denial then and act like they weren't warned ahead of time. I'm saying like there's a purpose to this. Donald Trump even backstabbing his supporters. Now, what if he does choose to go after the media? Well, geez, aren't we involved in the media? It's kind of crazy, Kyle, to hear people say fuck the media when they are the media. And we're going to have a war with the media. It sounds like schizophrenic because that sword goes both ways. And it seems like people don't really know what controls this government or shadow government, i.e. New World Order, that kind of thing, Illuminati. And I don't really throw out buzzwords like that, like Illuminati got so overused. But, I mean, originally a lot of these people were straight up, bona fide, you can't trust them, conspiracy theorists, top of the pyramid. Watch out. Top of the pyramid sharp. And now it's like, we showed them Jesus intervened in the voting machines, and Donald Trump was favored by God.
There's always been a
Kyle,
question.
it's like we're on a highway to hell, like AC/DC says.
Well, that's actually very adroit of you to mention that. There's always been a question in libertarian circles about whether conspiracism is valuable in garnering opposition to the state. Whether it would be something specific like 9/11 truth or certain types of things like maybe Sandy Hook, or pick an example, whether false flags or no, even the Gulf of Tonkin incident, right?
The moon. Did we go to the moon and what's inside the moon?
Right, or whatever. It doesn't matter the specific, conspiracy, real or alleged in question. The more strategic matter to be resolved is conspiracism as a, shall we say, field of study, is conspiracism really worth it for libertarians to dabble in or advocate or draw people, recruit them into our ranks and so forth in one sense or another? And that's been very hotly debated. Even Cantwell himself, back before he was humping the Trump and had something resembling integrity, Cantwell himself was more along the lines of conspiracism is a valuable tool to turn people to help begin the process of turning people against the state. And even back then, even back when admittedly I did support Cantwell, I wrote the article explaining the Free State Project censorship debacle where they threw him out for free speech and because he did nothing wrong, because he actually had integrity back then. And when he had his integrity, he was also kind of leaning more conspiratorial, and I don't. But it's okay, right? I mean, it takes all types to build a free society, and I kind of understood that. So for me, it's more, I kind of just tolerate it, and that's fine. I mean, people have their own interests and so forth. I try to kind of stay away from that stuff as much as possible, but for some other people, it can be valuable for other reasons. However, in the fullness of time, I think it's rather interesting that maybe perhaps things have swung back towards my initial inclination, where maybe perhaps conspiracism, and maybe not in its totality, but in much of what it has unfortunately become, even coming from me, is that I think it's largely become a time sink. It's increased people's opportunity costs. Let me put it this way. The time and effort that people spent on researching, this is one example, the Illuminati, the Bavarian Order of the Illuminati, Adam Vossite and all of that. All the time and effort that was spent on that and making videos and podcasts and writing or whatever the hell, and all the time and effort devoted to learning that and sharing it with others was time and effort not spent on doing things that arguably would have been more productive human action, such as, I don't know, going and living off grid like what you've been doing. Because, I mean, you can't be everywhere at once. You have to, as rational human actors, you actually have to make decisions about how you're going to spend your time and energy. And so, if you're going to go like research the Illuminati and write a video or make a video or whatever versus, I need to like go buy some solar panels. It's kind of like, I don't know, man, I'm kind of leaning more towards the one rather than the other, me personally, if that was kind of the choice I was facing. And so even from a more purely economic viewpoint, I do think that, while it's true that human action is purposeful behavior, I would further suggest that maybe perhaps some behavior is more purposeful than others. And so, granted, hey, look, if conspiracism is valuable in breaking people out of the left-right paradigm, and that's the only value it has, then fine, it's a tool in the toolbox. But then again, so is also
Huh.
studying economics too, in terms of understanding property rights, correctly.
Well, conspiracism, a term I don't normally use, but I will in this manner, can be used to keep someone also in the left-right paradigm. So what I will
Yeah.
say is this is a very huge subject, which no, so I'll try to keep my points brief on this one. But when I got involved in 2004, like the mainstream conspiracy talking points were pretty similar, and then kind of reaching this climax, kind of moving the direction of in the Fed by '08 with the rise of the Ron Paul presidency and things of that nature, and then the role Alex Jones was playing in the redirection of liberty movement energy into the elections, and noticing that pattern continuing in 2012, and then just becoming aware of the redirect of different movements as time went on, and seeing how the conspiracies changed to favor certain sides. So, of course, we have the Obama Antichrist conspiracy coming from the other side, only to see it switch, and the conspiracy, not continuing on a similar train of thought, but then jumping over here and then creating a conspiracy here where really we should be looking closer at who Trump really is. And so with technology and so much disinformation, which is a term that's been used for many years, not necessarily fake news, but I am an early coiner of the term fake news. I don't know if I'm the first. I don't know, but I know that over a year ago, I was discussing false Islamic invasion news in the alternative media. So when a lot of people just say, let's say they're new and they first get involved and they're going to go get into conspiracy theory, like today or like this calendar year, and they're like, oh, who are the top sites? Or they start following, or they start going to like beforeitsnews.com. And then they're led in all these disinformation directions. They're hit with far more disinformation than what I got involved. So I think I have a lot to share with regards to it, because I've always been very interested in the spiritual knowledge behind becoming conspiracy aware and seeing the state as evil, and that being a greater concept. So I think that's the role I'm trying to play. And yes, I've gone off grid, and yes, it's difficult not only doing or having all those hats, but being judged by others because you're seen as a conspiracist. It's horrible, man. It is horrible. But I've also been judged for well over 12 years by all family and everyone that I'm a little bit beyond that. Society's just going to continue. The only goal for me is to be conspiracy theorist, really, is what I'm used to using.
Mm-hmm.
It's all very limited. Because if someone has spiritual ideas, or if they're discussing off-grid living, self-sufficient living, reading ancient history or history of the world in order to shine a light, I'm going to do more Middle East history later on in life. So that's not conspiracy theorist per se. It's really like there's even conspiracy history, but just the reality of history itself, and stage wars and funding to both sides. And maybe if we look closer at the history of the Russian invasion of Afghanistan, we might see in detail how the U.S. and Russia, knowingly or unknowingly, overtly or covertly, worked together to bring down Afghanistan to where it is today. So it's like there's also not a lot of unity in the alternative media or the conspiracy research community. And so it's for that reason and the co-opting that I've started to use the hashtag free media once in a while, and I'll mention it once in a while, to kind of say that I do believe that there is like a break-off taking place. I've even gotten some people, there's been a lot of haters, but some people I'll acknowledge have thanked me for maintaining my independence throughout this whole thing, saying that I'm one of the few in the quote alternative media, but I'll call it free media, we can call it independent media, or just on YouTube or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate that. And so I think that there's a lot of pressure also to join the Trump train. People are very malicious with their words if you leave the cult. And I'm noticing this, and I'm noticing ways that people are trying to get inside my head, Kyle. They'll say things like, I've supported you for years. Or I've watched you for years, as if I owe them something, like as if there's some sort of accord. And I'm noticing that they're doing this at the same moment. It's like, well, get out the fucking door. And don't let the door hit you on the way out. But literally, I don't know how they're in the mindset that they that I owe them something to be someone that I'm not. Is it because they're so used to watching other fake people on YouTube
Yeah.
that they're so used to this fakeness that I'm so real that it's considered, wait a minute, this guy is maybe he's the enemy. And so if they're running around with the pitchfork talking to me like the enemy, I'm looking at them like they're the children of the corn. So when I'm looking at them like they're the children of the corn, I mean that when I say you cannot rationalize with a Trump supporter because they haven't even worked to show me that they can. The closest a guy said was, Alex, I've been watching you for years. I like you. That's about as far as they can go if they even go that direction. But you got to understand, Middle Eastern people are the threat now. So people are justified in being afraid of you. If you maybe look a little Arab one day because you didn't shave enough. You know what? I'm tired of hearing people say that. So, I've been bringing these terms to them, and they're throwing out white genocide. You got the, social justice warriors doing the white guilt. Well, I bring them two other terms: white judgment and white denial.
Yeah.
Okay, white judgment. We're going to judge those people automatically are all about violent Sharia law, and then white denial. No, they're not doing that. They're not doing that. No, you're exaggerating. Radical Islam is a concern. Donald Trump really just wants to make things good again. They're not doing that. Saw in Reddit on the Donald Trump page a few months ago, and I think I told you about it. I hope you saved it. I hope I saved it somewhere because it's going to come up later on. And so with this Drain the Swamp theme, that had nothing to do with politics. It was a drone attack over an innocent Afghan civilian.
Mm.
And so if they're all about that, why didn't they like Obama? Because if we look at the real Obama, 9 out of 10 of the drone attack victims were civilians. They weren't even terrorists.
Collateral damage.
Is this the sign? Is this the sign of Is this the sign of a Muslim? I don't think that's the sign of a Muslim. And so with this whole Obama the Muslim thing, they really were actually able to divert attention away from Obama is killing a lot of Muslims. And I think in the end, that's what it was. Making Muslims or Middle Eastern immigrants that are like pro-Obama idiots. Absolute idiots.
Yeah, and that's kind of unfortunate. That's kind of the way things have gone, isn't it? So, in the sense of trying to like make sense of things and kind of where to go from here or whatever, I think it's important to remember what Sam Konkin said. Well, there's an obscure reference. What Sam Konkin said back in the 1980s, which was that, look, I mean, the people who have integrity are going to be the people who, to use one phrase, are hardcore. They're actually consistent day in and day out. I mean, whether you like them or not, you at least know what to expect. You know which face of Eve you're talking to, instead of the namby-pamby, bending with whichever way, according to the winds of political expediency, which, unfortunately, certain individuals like Stefan Molyneux and, as is the case here, Chris Cantwell, have gone from more something like Ron Paul to firmly within the Trump camp, which, of course, for anybody who understands the economic implications of Trump building a wall and some renegotiating trade deals, and probably more likely than not putting in a tariff for 20, would be that it's mercantilism, it's protectionism, which, of course, was the economic schemes that were perpetrated by various European monarchies going, centuries back. So it's like he imagines himself to be, Trump falsely imagines himself to be our ruler, and that's
Let's expand on that. It's even almost as if his face is a demigod face. I've seen a drawing caricature of him, and it's like there's something about his appearance, the body language. Notice the Jesus poses. I don't know if you've noticed those, Kyle, where the hands are outstretched as if he's on a cross.
Yes.
But okay, you've noticed that. I've also seen others do the little, like, wow, is it? Are they conscious of it, or what? But anyway, I would say in the case of Donald Trump and the photographers, yes, just like the halo around Bush and Obama's head.
Right.
And so he's fulfilling this role of leadership because of Clinton, Bush, and Obama and how they made them feel. And it's like something in their cellular ancestral memory going back to Europe or ancient times wants to see a good ruler again, so their body simply feels good. Even if it's a lie, it's like eating a good meal. It's like an illusion. It's like in the Matrix where the guy's talking about steak. Well, I know it's not real. It's a part of the Matrix, but ignorance is bliss. Take the blue pill. And I think that the trauma has been so great and the fear has been so great regarding the end and various end-time prophecies that have been so extreme on the other end. These people really believe that World War III was averted with the election.
Jeez.
That was all a smokescreen for something else. But they generally believe this with all their heart. And they're literally going, thank you, Jesus, hallelujah. And it's like, what do they think they're actually praying to?
Yeah,
when they pray, thank you for the Trump, when in reality we may be dealing with a big problem.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at His Majesty the Rug, I see what you mean in terms of like his physical resemblance and especially like his, the nonverbal body cues, the body language and such. Yeah, I mean, he's very arrogant. He's filled with so much hubris that, quite frankly, I don't see much difference between him and Nancy Pelosi. We have to pass the bill so you know what's in it. Remember her, Pelosi?
I'm not going to get into fringe conspiracy stuff that he's a clone. Let me say this. His mannerisms, though, are changing already to something like I'm just saying briefly, 1 year ago when all this was starting with the Trump protests, he would say, get him out of here.
Yeah.
Get him out of here. Get him out of here. And I'm like, whoa, that's programming. We're being programmed for some sort of fucking just throw him the fuck out. Like some welcome to the jungle. And it's like, how are people not seeing how incredibly and then the fact that he kept repeating that is like, whoa, he's programming his peoples. And whether they're using spells, I mean, people were all about analyzing Obama's body language. They were full-on books written about Obama.
Right.
Obama's, what was it called? Non-linguistic programming. And
something like that.
Obama, right. People don't even do that with Trump, but with Trump, you gotta land. And then the hand signs. He's doing the hand signs when he's sitting next to Obama. I said there would be an official backslap, congratulations from Obama. And there's been behind-the-scenes communication between them. While they're fighting over the hacking, right, on the surface level, there's other goings on between those two that have nothing to do with like what's in the headlines regarding this quote-unquote transition. And all people got to say is, holy shit, World War III is about to happen now with Russia anyways, and they're going to false flag something and kill Donald Trump.
Jeez.
And before he's even gotten a chance to prove to them he's legit while they criticize us, you give him a chance, man. It's like that fucking leave Britney alone meme on fucking leave Trump alone. We got to do that, actually. Yeah. It's like, whoa, man. Can't they see themselves in the mirror?
No, apparently not. And you know what? It's interesting. I'm personally waiting for the equivalent of the Zig Heil. Although, to be fair, maybe that's already happened because, and especially for the listeners who may remember this, just to reenact it, Trump, 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 Trump. Oh, is that really that much different from Zig Heil? I don't know.
That was pretty fanatical. And so you have people out there, and a lot of these stories are legit, whether it be high school teams. No, we're not seeing all Trump voters are racist. We're saying that there's a demographic of America that's been acting a fool. And so when they go act a fool and they go race bait to the black team or whatever, they're going Trump, Trump, Trump. That's not normal. I'm glad you reminded me, Kyle, because we haven't seen behavior like this in the past. There were people that played up even more so, especially Alex Jones with the Obama deception. And if you look at that, there was a big play up about a civilian army. Do you remember that, Kyle?
Yes.
There were certain aspects of the Obama conspiracy that did not come to fruition.
Right. It was a right. The National Service Force or whatever it was a proposal,
right.
And Rahm Emanuel was involved in that too. He was on C-SPAN, right. And but thankfully it puttered out into nothing because it wasn't actually made into law. People were just kind of getting all skittish about the proposed legislation. Unlike something like the Obamacare, which at one point was proposed legislation and then it became law, and there was even the Sebelius court case that I've blogged about where they said it's like a penalty tax. So it's interesting you bring that up, where a lot of people during, especially Obama's first term in particular, were getting, and usually the Tea Partiers, because that was when they were popular before Occupy Wall Street, where they were getting really skittish.
thing as the
Right.
dominant issue, and people like me and others, we chose to stay away from it. And there's this guy, Manning, and Manning was all about the birther issue, but he wouldn't hit Obama on the other issues.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what Manning's agenda is. He's definitely pissing off the Trump supporters, telling them Jesus is coming back to kill him and shit. But anybody can go over and look at what's being put out by the Outlaw Channel, and it's like, oh, fuck. He's like, 59 million people. He coming back to kill you. You better run, Whitey, run. And I don't know what his motivation is. His views don't seem to be that high. It's automatically assumed, unfortunately, that Soros is paying everyone. I'll tell you what, we've talked about this, an idea that isn't being proposed, and it's Trump has set up his own supporters by acting in a way to where we're seeing blowback. And we don't support the assaults, but it's like people shouldn't be flaunting their support of someone that has knowingly turned so many people against the demographic. To act in ignorance of that is to act in an unsafe manner. If you're walking with your girlfriend and you're in a bad part of town, you're going out clubbing, and you got a nice vehicle, and your girlfriend's breasts are hanging out, you walk around a crowd of 10 guys, and they see you got your proud Trump banner, and you're flaunting it, and you're playing Living in America, and you're just going, take it, radical left, honk, 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 and you got like clown makeup on. I'm just saying. And you're running around acting a clown, and then boom, all of a sudden you're jumped by 5-10 people that are programmed by the media, and you know this, to see you as the enemy. Why are you walking up, poking them with a stick? There's a scene from the movie, Kentucky Fried Movie, 1977. Where he's like, it's a comedy scene on like the Daredevil. It's like the Daredevil, what was the name of that guy in the 60s or 70s? He's a famous Daredevil, and it was like a spoof.
Evil Knievel
And here he
Jr.
is, Evil Knievel Jr. on his most dangerous mission, and he walks up, in the hood and some railroad tracks. There's like 5 black guys walking around. He's like, niggers, and he turns around, starts running. The most daring, the most. It's like that was his idea of a stunt. Well, I know it's offensive for me to tell people that, but it's like Donald Trump has straight up talked about deportation.
Mm-hmm.
Straight up called representatives or members of Black Lives Matter terrorists. And when you marginalize, and I'm not a fan of Black Lives Matter, a whole group of people upset about people getting shot, and just say that if you're a part of a movement, you're probably a terrorist. There's ways in which Trump has made an enemy out of multiple demographics. And because of their desire to want to like their leader out of this biological impulse, we'll call it that, to go back to the days of their ancestry where they like their king again, where they like the new king. And it gives them a sense of hope that they just averted the apocalypse instead of walking into an apocalypse. So it really seems like I also have been looking back at certain people that made a big deal about Obama doing certain things of an antichrist nature in which he did not. We're talking about above and beyond. And those people are not that concerned about Trump, ironically. And if they are concerned, they're gulping, saying that they're having a really bad feeling something's going to happen before the election. So let's talk about their inaccurate crystal ball reading, bad feeling after nothing happens in the next few weeks, and it's business as usual. So, I mean, I've laid out my projections. I'm curious if you're starting to have any, Kyle, on where things are going to go. Button issues real quick. China, we talked about that. And there seems to be some sort of a major wedge over Taiwan that's building. Whether or not Trump is even going to be the president again is the main issue on a lot of people's minds. A lot of people just say it's not going to happen, not going to happen, and they're not going to be accountable after the fact when he is the president. And they're going to, I'm projecting, just make excuses, just like the Obama supporters make excuses. Yeah, it seems like he's friends with Russia, but what will things really be like if, in fact, there is a inauguration? I think that there seems to be some sort of cooperation between Russia and the U.S. to kill a lot of Syrians, as sick as that sounds. And I think that the proof is in the pudding, and the lack of true compassion for those people, and the amount of hatred that's been swept up. And I've also indicted Facebook in promoting fake news, unlike the official story that Facebook is censoring fake news. No, Facebook is going to start bearing real alternative media. But I've seen Facebook promote really sick, dehumanizing articles about refugees. So Facebook is not like some innocent victim. Facebook is the player a leading player. They're like the one dealing out the cards in the casino, or they're like the pit boss in the movie Casino who watches the dealer and makes sure everything is okay. While the dealer is like the fake news profile or the fake Facebook profile. And so, I'll see like these groups where there's like 50,000 members, right, that I'll be in. Well, what stories are at the top of the feed that are like demonizing these people as monsters with fake website after fake website after fake website? It's fake Facebook profiles promoted by Facebook.com. How is that significant? 44% of people are getting their news and information from Facebook. And so they've been led now for several years. It's not just that stuff. It's like, oh, the microchip is coming this year. And all these ladies and people will be freaking out, a couple of years ago. Oh, my God, NBC News says in 2016 it's the year. No, that wasn't NBC News. That was NBCnews.co. NBCnews.co is a fake news website, just like MSNBC.co or something to that effect. So it's like, Kyle, that's an example of in plain sight. We'll just create a website and then a couple like extra letters. And the people weren't able to acknowledge that and still aren't. So it's like someone took a 2x4, walked up to Liberty Movement after it drugged it, got high a little bit, then went bang, and it's like, whoa, they didn't even realize they've been stunned. And the rapists of their mind are already pulling off their clothes and getting ready to rape them to the next level. So it's like, how could Trump really fuck over Americans is now what we look at economically. What type of a shitstorm could he start with China and set wheels in motion by design that are irreversible in ways that these Trump supporters won't even consider? And how are they, and I'm not necessarily throwing all these questions at you, but just raising them publicly, how are they threatening the safety of their own family if they're going to stay in such a ridiculous mindset? Heaven forbid not actually start prepping for something serious, put their feet up and actually relax, because daddy's back. And we got Donald Trump, and he wants to expand our nuclear capability. Apparently that's the latest. He wants more nukes. So I'll just pause right there because I'm going to keep coming back to this topic. Big stuff is about to happen the next few weeks.
Well, something you said earlier, I kind of want to highlight something because I don't think many people know about this. It's interesting you mentioned about the growing support, and I've mentioned it too, as well as only a handful of others, regarding the alternative media basically being co-opted and promoting Trump and all that. However, it's interesting. You mentioned about the YouTube comment section for many of your videos, and this has happened to some of my other colleagues as well, because I stay off YouTube, even though I used to do that, but vlogging was not my thing. It was more blogging was more my thing. And something I've noticed in this election cycle, Alex, is that generally speaking, it's mainly been a combination of both Facebook and YouTube, where a lot of the so-called social media support for Trump seems to be coalescing around pretty strongly.
Right, so I am in enemy territory. I am deep behind enemy lines right now. They're swarming me. They're swarming me.
Yeah, I think
with the bat. Get back.
Yeah, I think
like
that's more than
zombies,
fair to say.
Man. It's like my precious, Donald Trump's our get fucking back, you junkie.
Well, I think that's more than fair to say. The other side of that coin, and this is the part most people probably don't realize unless they read a lot, but even some of my other fellow bloggers, and this came to my attention actually from some of my other subscribers to my blog, kind of pointed this out to me, gave me some links and whatnot, because I've just been busy writing lately just about other things. Apparently, the blogosphere is not, if collectively speaking, the blogosphere is not supportive of Trump in the slightest, which was very interesting. So sometimes it'll be more leftist type, sometimes it'll be just other people.
You mean the people that can read and write?
Read and write, yeah. I know it's like initially it may sound strange, but if you think about it, it actually makes a strange sort of sense. And so the blogosphere, collectively speaking, generally speaking, is not supportive of Trump. And it kind of ranges from me to something kind of neutral but still like the system is bad kind of thing, so's Hillary and all that, where it's a little bit more fair. And yeah, there are some leftist types and all that, but there is even one or two conservative bloggers here and there saying that, Trump is no Ronald Reagan. That was apparently something that cropped up a couple times and so forth. So from whichever partisanship or just garden variety ideology of any kind, or even people that are just more apolitical and neutral, or in my case, anti-political, the blogosphere does not seem to be humping the Trump. I mean, every once in a while, yeah, but anybody who's reading and writing, no. It's mainly YouTube, Facebook, and maybe a few other things. I know some people have mentioned Instagram or Pinterest, especially regarding putting up photos of like Donald Trump rallies. I know that's kind of cropped up a lot, but otherwise,
on the other side, you have a lot of recycled talking points. It seems
yeah.
Soros, conspiracy theory. Just to touch on that again briefly, it's like so you don't even want to, unless you're even really familiar with it, even get involved. Yes, I have confidence in my own opinion on things. Of course, I'm going to if I'm going to be doing podcasts. So I agree with myself on certain things. I don't agree with most of the people out there in the conspiracy research community. So it's used really to keep people in these really off-the-wall directions. So it's Soros. The conspiracy is one of the most perverted fake news conspiracies, which is being promoted by Rents and others. And here's one more point. That's what Putin said about his own protesters. Those are Soros people from the U.S. government.
Yeah.
I will say that just because the left, and we were talking about certain things before Clinton was, not because we were Clinton fans, we were talking about the possible Russian-Putin connection for over 4 or 5 years. I was talking about Russia and RT subverting America. I wasn't the first. I'm sure a few others blogged about it, but we were like in the only 100 or 50. We were like the top 50 people on the planet. You typed in, Russian propaganda, RT, you'd find myself and maybe 50 other people, back. Maybe now, not enough. Still, they're more popular than ever. But I'm saying it was never a popular thing to go against RT. And I swear I saw RT as the enemy from day one. I'm like, well, looky. We've got Alex Jones and his boys, and they're putting out an obvious Russian narrative. No way is this legit. And it wasn't like using rocket science to come up with that, or to be like listening to Pentagon talking points. All that's insulting. I was coming up with that opinion on my own. No MSNBC talking points because the topic wasn't an issue yet. I was like, well, don't you notice how RT is in D.C., like right outside? Don't you think that's a little bit like, that they didn't have a hard time setting up shop. They weren't considered the enemy. Like, if they're going to have a McCarthyism, Kyle, why not just go directly knock on their door then and say, hey, guys, can we talk to you? I mean, I know we've had this relationship like for 5 years, you guys, but I mean, I think it's time you guys got to go home. Mm-hmm. I mean, seriously, that's what you would notice. Like, where someone would talk about RT. But no, they just started going after these websites. So it's like even the way that the alternative media defended itself wasn't really intelligent either. No. A little bit of cognitive impairment, like defensiveness. Like, well, we're not fake news. You're fake news. Okay, that's cute for a few weeks. But at some point, one of you's got to be intelligent enough to say, well, wait a minute, there actually has been some websites pretending to be alternative media just demonizing Muslims as animals. And that's actually kind of led to not necessarily Trump winning, because I believe it's a selection, but people getting bat crazy with that. We got to string him up. The Muslims come invade us. Well, there's a reason why they think the Muslims are coming to invade them. They're not actually invading them. It's happening in their mind, like some mind control on the internet through the fake news. And it's like no one was able to say, well, wait a minute, there actually is some fake news. Whoa, we probably should talk about this. Where's it coming from? Is this the government? Is it our government? Is it the Chinese? Could they be working together? And it's like, whoa, these are people that typically were conspiracy people, and they're not even questioning a very elaborate fake news psyops with Facebook help. Again, I'm just imposing my opinion because I think this is the time to share it. There's got to be, Kyle, other people on the planet talking about this too. But if we are the only ones, man, we're living through history right now. We're playing huge roles in putting out this info.
I think we're pretty much, I don't want to say the vanguards, but basically, let's say in the super minority. I don't think that's an exaggeration.
I'm having a Lord of the Rings moment, man.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much in, I don't want to say the Brotherhood of the Ring, but it's interesting. People speaking about Lord of the Rings, just as a little bit of a side note, and it is related to, I guess, this so-called alt-right thing, is that the whole point of that story, that trilogy of movies, those books, was that power, and particularly political power, is so inherently dangerous that no human should ever wield it. And so the whole symbolism, just to spoil a little bit of the plot for those people who haven't watched it yet or whatever, the whole point of throwing the Ring of Power into the volcano there at Mordor was to destroy power. It was to basically abolish the state, even in a more political context. And unfortunately, the problem with the Trump supporters, the so-called alt-right and so forth, is that they're basically the fictional equivalent of the guy who, I can't remember the character's name, but the guy who got corrupted by it, the little sniveling weasel kind of character with the long strands of hair, the gremlin-looking creature.
Right, my precious.
My Precious, right, that guy, that particular character. Yeah, and it
I just
destroyed
got to
him.
interject. There was a guy that was a split image of my precious that was a Obama worshiper.
Mm.
So the my precious effect happens to both the left and the right. Just to make that clear.
Yeah, and political power destroys people. And whether it's someone who actually is a public servant, government employee, who is actually wielding said power, or it's people who are, I guess you could call them sycophantic statists. They're not paid by the government, but they do things like
My
go.
precious Obama got sign my welfare check. It's payday. The guy
Mhm.
literally go, it's payday.
Right, or
Oh
or
my
even
God,
or
dear.
or even if they're not getting a welfare handout or corporate subsidy, but they're just doing things like going to rallies or going to marches or voting or petition or well, basically they're at their own cost. They're propping up the state and the left-right paradigm and all of that.
Hump
They're
Trump,
part of the
hump
system.
Trump, hump Trump,
Hmm.
hump Trump.
Exactly, exactly.
Hillary for prison. Banger in the prison.
Right, and see, there's
Sickos.
well, of course. And see, here's kind of the other problem too, and I'll try to keep this brief. When you look even at certain activist organizations that claim to be constitutionalist, it's rather interesting that their bias, which unfortunately, and people will want to probably crucify me for this, but unfortunately do tend to be right wing, will do things. Let me just make one example very briefly. Most people don't know about this, so I'll spill the beans, and it's not the first time because I wrote about it a while back. The Three Percenters, the Idaho Three Percenters in particular, there was a rally that you'll love this. There was a rally they did before the fiasco at Malheur in Oregon, where they were holding a rally. It was called Idaho First. And the whole point of that stupid protest was to basically beg the DHS, see, it's already bad, was to beg the DHS to have stricter immigration controls due to the so-called Syrian refugee crisis. And in fact, hold on, I'm looking at my old article here. Brandon Curtis, he was the guy, and I even quote him. He was standing on the bed of a pickup truck with a megaphone, and he said the following, quote, "The parade route. There will be people, like I said, placed at the stoplights. We have to observe all the traffic laws. That was the one request we had from the Boise Police Department. We do have a use permit, remember American the whole protest permit for protesting thing? Even Naomi Wolf was against that. We do have a use permit for doing what we do, so we're all good to go. We just can't obstruct traffic," close quote. And the rest of that rally, and that video's still up, where you can watch them basically saying, like, "Go home, you foreigners," basically, although they're a little bit rough around the language. "Go home, you foreigners. Idaho is for Idahoans," or something of that effect. And it's like, holy God. So when you fast forward only a few months later
Right.
to the fiasco at Malheur, which is now about a year old, actually today is the anniversary of Operation Hammond Freedom, that stupid little protest where they were like marching in the snow, and the takeover of the occupation, I think, was a year ago today, actually, January 2nd. Uh, so when all of that happened, one of those patriot type groups that were at least peripherally involved with that was, of course, the Idaho Three Percenters, the same people who have a problem with the Syrian refugees, and Brandon Curtis in particular, who, oh, by the way, for people who have now forgotten their history, Brandon Curtis was also the same individual who made the decision that when Finicum was gunned down to dissolve the supposed security perimeter that was for the benefit of the people there at the refuge. So then for that next 2 week period, those folks there that remained after most of them scattered, who became known as the Final Four, and then there was the whole like FBI hostage negotiation bullcrap. All that whole 2 week standoff only happened because of what Brandon Curtis did and his 3%ers who are like these allegedly brave people who are exactly the same individuals, the exact same organization that was telling the Syrian refugees to get to get out of America. So I mean, you talk about how there's this genuinely provable bigotry and prejudice, not social justice warrior fake grievances, but real provable stuff on tape, where you have some of the alleged patriots basically, yeah.
Let's go ahead and cover that because my batteries are about to go. And that's right, folks, coming to you from Off Grid Realities. Definitely covered a lot of information. Kyle, so you have a few things that you've been blogging about, updates over at thelastbastille.com.
Yes. If people also want to learn about a different topic, which is about right to travel, and do you have a right to travel? There's an entire series I wrote. It took me 3 months to write all the installments for it. But yeah, if you don't want to get distracted by fake grievances of fake Muslim invasions or I'm a trans, whatever the hell, but you want to learn about real tyranny and oppression with the cops pulling people over because they can't show their papers, like a driver's license, for example. There's an entire series I wrote that goes into grotesque and very detailed nuances in terms of what the laws in Texas say about all that kind of stuff. So there is real news. There is real things to be concerned about if people really want to learn.
So just a little bit of advice for Trump supporters and Trump voters. If you want to be taken seriously, foaming at the mouth like a rabid animal, accusing people of being libtards, being paid by Soros, without even checking out their content, makes you look like a retard. And this is constructive criticism that you probably need to take seriously if you want to be taken seriously, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, thank you.
Appreciate being with you, Alex.